All right, let's get right into it. We're about to break down one of the boldest, most audacious corporate moves in recent history. This is a true king's gambit, a high-stakes chess move by the undisputed ruler of an entire industry. This is the story of how De Beers decided to disrupt itself.
To really get the shockwave De Beers sent through the market, you gotta think of it like this. Imagine you're at a concert for the world's greatest folk singer. Then, halfway through, he walks out, plugs in a screaming electric guitar, and blows the speakers out. The purists, the people who built their whole world around that old acoustic sound, they were absolutely horrified.
And that is exactly what happened here. The industry didn't just whisper their concerns, they shouted them from the rooftops. To them, this move felt like a total betrayal. It was like De Beers was legitimizing the very thing they all feared would destroy their entire business. So what did they do that was so shocking? Well, here it is. And it's a move that just seems to defy all logic, right? For more than 100 years, De Beers built its empire, its entire identity, on the magic and rarity of natural diamonds dug from the earth. And then, boom, almost overnight, they jump headfirst into selling mass-produced, lab-grown stones. It really makes you wonder, why on earth would a company try to sabotage its own legacy?
To the rest of the diamond world, this really did feel like a diamond-plated betrayal. I mean, this was an unthinkable act coming from the very company that literally wrote the rulebook on how to value and sell these precious stones.
So, to really feel the scale of this shock, we have to rewind the clock a bit. We need to understand just how completely De Beers dominated the world of diamonds, not just as a business, but, as a massive cultural force.
Just look at this timeline. It's wild. From the very beginning, in 1888, De Beers systematically took control. By 1902, they had their hands on 90% of all diamond production. And think about this. As late as the 1980s, they controlled the sale of nearly 90% of all diamonds on Earth. They weren't just another player in the market. For all intents and purposes, they were the market.
And this is where their real genius shines through. See, it wasn't just about controlling the supply. It was about creating the demand, practically out of thin air. This one phrase, "a diamond is forever," is probably one of the most successful marketing slogans in the history of the world. They took a shiny rock and managed to tie it to these huge concepts of eternity, love, and commitment.
And hey, the proof is in the pudding. Before their big campaign, only about 15% of American brides got a diamond engagement ring. It just wasn't some ancient, deep-seated tradition. But 50 years later, 80%. De Beers didn't just sell a product, they literally manufactured a cultural norm that's still with us today.
But this whole empire that De Beers built on scarcity and emotion, well, it was about to face a massive threat. And this threat wasn't coming from a newly discovered mine, but from a laboratory.
Okay, so this is the crucial thing to understand here. We are not talking about fakes. This isn't cubic zirconia. A lab-grown diamond is a real diamond. It's got the same atomic structure, the same hardness, the same sparkle. You absolutely cannot tell the difference just by looking at it. The only thing that separates them is that one came from deep inside the earth and the other came from a machine.
And this is the economic earthquake that changed everything. In just a single decade, the cost to create a beautiful 1-carat lab diamond fell from $4,000 to just $300. Technology had basically just destroyed the entire concept of scarcity that De Beers' business model was built on.
Now, this new technology popped up at the perfect time to connect with a whole new generation. Millennials, they were drawn to the lower price, for sure, but also to the story behind it. They could know exactly where their diamond came from, which meant they could avoid the concerns about conflict diamonds and the environmental hit from mining.
And the numbers really showed this wasn't just some fringe idea. A poll found that 53%, more than half, of millennial women said they would happily accept a lab-grown diamond for their engagement ring. That cultural norm that De Beers had so carefully constructed for decades, yeah, it was starting to crack.
So De Beers is facing this massive threat. And they didn't run, they didn't hide. Instead, they made their move. And it was a shocking, high-stakes gambit that absolutely no one saw coming. This right here is the absolute key to understanding their whole strategy. De Beers didn't launch a lab-grown brand to try and compete with all of the startups. No. They launched a brand to fundamentally change what we all think a lab-grown diamond is. Their goal was to put these stones in a completely different, much, much cheaper box.
And their playbook, it was brilliant, and it was ruthless. First, super simple pricing. $800 for a 1-carat stone, period. That just dismantled the whole complex pricing game of natural diamonds. Second, they offered no grading certificates. The message? These aren't special, one-of-a-kind gems. They're mass-produced. Third, they stayed miles away from engagement rings, protecting their forever cash cow. And finally, they pitched them as fun, casual fashion, not precious heirlooms.
I mean, just look at how aggressive this was. At the time, other lab-grown diamonds were selling for around $4,000 a carat, trying to be just a little cheaper than natural ones. De Beers just swooped in and undercut the entire market by 80%. They weren't trying to make a small profit, they were trying to absolutely crush their competitors' margins.
So that was the Lightbox gambit, a massive, industry-shaking bet. But the big question was, would it actually work? Or had De Beers just unleashed a force that even they couldn't control? The risks here were just enormous. I mean, by getting in the game, did they just give lab-grown diamonds the ultimate stamp of approval? By staying away from the engagement ring market, did they just create a huge, wide-open lane for their rivals to attack their most profitable business? This was a high-wire act with no safety net.
And what's so fascinating is that the competition didn't just roll over. They didn't panic and slash their prices to match De Beers. Instead, you had players like Diamond Foundry who actually announced they were going to raise their prices, doubling down on that premium high-end market that De Beers had just walked away from. They basically refused to be put in the cheap box.
And this really gets to the heart of the irony, doesn't it? For decades, De Beers spent billions of dollars teaching all of us about the 4 Cs, that whole intricate system that gives a natural diamond its unique value. And now, with Lightbox, they were basically betting that for this whole other category of identical lab-grown products, none of those rules should apply anymore.
But their move definitely had a real tangible impact. In the year they launched Lightbox, that price gap between lab-grown and natural diamonds got a lot wider. Before their announcement, a lab diamond was about 29% cheaper. By the end of that year, it was 43% cheaper. They were succeeding in pulling down the perceived value of the entire category.
So that leaves us with the ultimate question. The first time around, De Beers used pure marketing genius to convince the world that a diamond's value was eternal. Now, they're trying to do the exact opposite, to convince us that an identical product has only fleeting, fashionable value. Can the masters of perception really pull off another reality-bending trick like that?
You know, just like Bob Dylan ending that controversial electric set, De Beers' move was a stark, clear farewell to the old way of doing things. Whether it's the end for the traditional industry or the end for the upstarts, one thing is for sure. The world of diamonds will never, ever be the same.